we're talking about is the emotional side of money. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the emotions that are tied to it, the emotions that we have that go into what built our money personality, then the emotions that we have when we spend money, when we buy things for other people, when we buy things for ourselves. It's all emotional. This is why I say you can't build a life you love on a budget you hate. Otherwise, you're just trying to put yourself into someone else's spreadsheet.
You're listening to Everyone's Talking Money. We're digging into a question so many high-earning women secretly ask themselves. Why don't I feel financially free? Let me ask you something. If someone looked at your bank account, would they see a high earner? Would they see a woman who actually feels confident with her money? Or would they see someone that is spending haphazardly and does not seem to have control over her finances? If you're nodding along because you've made it on paper, but still feel like you're winging it behind the scenes, you're not alone. Today, I'm sitting down with Linda Grizely, personal finance speaker and creator of the MeMoney Method. Linda knows firsthand that you can't build a life you love on a budget you hate. And she's here to help us unpack the high earners paradox, that weird disconnect between income and confidence that so many women face. If you've ever felt guilty about spending on yourself or wondered why success doesn't feel as secure as you thought it would, this episode is your permission slip to start making money moves that actually serve you. Let's get into it. Linda, you say you can't build a life on a budget you hate. What exactly does that mean?
It means that if you're not leaning into your money personality and the person that you are, and you're trying to budget and you're trying to restrict yourself, that's not living your life. That's not building a life that you love, because you're hating that budget because it's very restrictive and you feel a feeling of scarcity around it. So what I do is I help people through the MeMoney method flip the idea of a budget and putting yourself as a line item on the budget so that you have an amount of money that you can spend without any permission, like from anybody, even yourself.
I am not a fan of budgets because, like you said, they're restrictive. I call it like the caged animal effect. Like you create this budget and it's like, okay, well, this is how much I spend on housing and utilities and gas for my car and all of these things. But the budget never accounts for the random stuff that happens. And it seems to happen like every day. And then you blow your budget and how do I categorize this item? And you start to overthink it, and then if it fails, you feel discouraged, you feel like you failed, you're not good with money. And the truth of the matter is you're not alone. Budgets don't work for about 70% of the population, and the 30% that do like it or it does work, likes those spreadsheets and likes all of those categories and can put things into neat little boxes. So I agree that budgets can feel super restrictive if they're not done the right way. And I think when they're done the right way, then they're not budgets. It's more strategies and planning and guardrails and all of that. And so what does it mean to put yourself on your budget?
So it means to take a certain amount of money, whether it's monthly or per paycheck or however you decide, because everybody is very unique, right? Their number is going to be different. Their system's going to be different. You have to lean into what works for you and not feel like you're being pushed into something that someone else is telling you what to do. But it's putting a number on there that you can spend, and you have to stay within that number, which means that if you say yes to something now, that you might be saying no to something later. So it helps you just to save also. But the idea is that not only do you put yourself as a line item on your budget, you pick this number, and you can do the number without the budget too, but you pick a number and then that's your number. And so you pay yourself that amount. You open up a separate account, a separate checking and savings account specifically for your me money. And you put that amount in there every payday, every day that you pay yourself, whether it's monthly or per paycheck. Put that amount in your checking account there, and that's what you spend on you. So all the other responsibilities and all that stuff is completely separate. This is just for you. So this is for, that pair of shoes that you want. This is for that face cream that you want, the girls trip, the whatever it is, right? Whatever it is that you want for you only, it goes in this bucket. And then you pay that money in that account every month. And when you have extra, you move it into a high yield savings account. So you just move your extra over there so that when you're ready to pay for that girls trip, you have the money and you can do it. So the idea is this. It all started because I put my husband on a budget. I said, I'm the one who handles all the finances, and you're just like spending, and you're just like, yeah, we got money. There's money in the bank. I can spend it. Now, he's not like a severe overspender, or there's no real big issue, but I was just like, you don't have any idea how much money you're spending. Because he'd be like, he'd go on a fishing trip and he'd be like, oh, fishing trip doesn't cost me anything. We split it with 5 guys. I'm like, you've got a boat, you got to pay for gas, you got to pay for, the trailer, you got to pay for licensing, you got to like, there's a lot more to this than just the cabin you're splitting with the guys. So I said, you get this much amount of money. He's like, oh, great. You're putting me on an allowance. I'm getting an allowance from my wife now. This is what we come to. And he was joking. And I was like, just try it for a while. And he's like, what about you? Are you going to get an allowance too? So yeah, I'll give myself the same number. We live under the same roof, same household. Like we have the same lifestyle. We should have the same number, regardless of who makes more money. So I gave myself the same number. And I asked him like after a couple months, I'm like, are you okay with this? And he said, yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm like, you don't feel like you're restricted? And he said, no, I'm actually just making better choices. So for instance, he saw this golf shirt that he wanted and he was like, oh, I could buy this golf shirt. But he's like, no, I have, however, 100 golf shirts or whatever, however many he has in his closet. And he's like, do I really need this golf shirt? I don't need this golf shirt. Would I rather save this money for my golf trip? Absolutely. So he didn't buy the golf shirt. He's like, I didn't need it. He's like, I just made a better choice. So he's putting more value, like his values on what he spends his money on. Like, is this worthy of my money? But for me, what happened was the complete opposite because I was the one who always said, I can't afford to go on a girls' trip. I'm not going to buy that for myself. Like, I'm the one buying the pair of shorts on sale for $10, and he's the one buying the $150 golf shirt, right? So for me, I was like, wow, I like actually have money now. And I stopped buying the $10 pair of shorts because I could justify $10 10 times. But now I can buy $100 worth of something and not have to answer to anyone. And when I say to anyone, I mean myself. Like, I'm like, no, that money is mine. If I want that, I can buy it. So what I found was that it was just because it made us so intentional with our money that we were spending on ourselves, it gave us both freedom and it gave us both a way to intentionally spend and place value on what we were buying for ourselves. So I started having other people try this and I found that it worked, whatever your money personality was. Like there was just a way for it to give you enough context and intention and thought process to your money, being mindful with that, that it was mind shifting for everyone. So now I have a course that teaches you how to do it, and it's really pretty simple. I mean, it's just pick a number and that's you, and you just go with it.
Love that because for you, it gives you permission to spend money. Because if based on your money personalities and based off of that one comment that you just made of, well, I always feel like I didn't have enough or I couldn't spend it, I could probably venture a guess as to what your personality was, which I would also venture to guess, and we'll get into the money personalities, it's different than what your husband's money personality is. And it's very rare that spouses or partners ever have the same personality. So it is like you are speaking two different languages. But I love that system because it benefits both of you, even though it's the same system, it benefits both of you in different ways. For you, it gave you the permission to start spending money. And for your husband, it's putting the guardrails on and making him think a little bit about his expenses or his purchases and start to value the dollar a little bit more and where it's going. And I think that this is where people struggle is you brought up the fishing trip or a girls trip or a new outfit or whatever it is, and it's like a bigger expense, or even not fun stuff like car insurance or summer camp, we have these big expenses that come up, and they don't happen every month, but they may happen every couple of months or just in a period of time, using the example of the car insurance every 6 months. And we somehow try to make that fit into our monthly budget or our monthly spending. But it's so hard to do. And like the thoughts, it can almost like make your brain become a pretzel because you're trying to figure out, well, okay, well, if I factor in this big expense, 1/12 of it every month, and it starts to get really difficult. And we start to overthink these expenses, where if we instead just allocate a bit every month, and everyone's bit is different depending on what their fixed expenses are, right? We can't just say, well, I'm going to put 50% of my money into my MeMoney account. You That's nice, but that's probably not realistic, right? So by looking backwards and going, well, here's our fixed expenses. This then goes into my MeMoney account, which then pays for these bigger one-off expenses, or like you said, gives you the permission to buy the shorts, to buy the shoes, to buy those things that you might have felt like, I don't think we can swing it. It's very simple, but it makes so much sense. And I really appreciate that.
It works with anybody's money personality because it it gives you, like, even if you're a person who doesn't spend money and you're super frugal and you're like, you're like a security seeker, like you want everything planned out, and you're not an impulse buyer, right? It's going to give you that flexibility to have that and let yourself loose a little bit without losing your footing, because you know that it's already planned, right? So for people that are super frugal and planning, and are in that other place, it gives them freedom. And for then, like, people that are risk takers, or avoiders that just don't pay attention to money, or like are always taking risk, it gives them something to have intention and be more mindful of the purchases that they're making and what they're doing with that. And for me, the interesting thing is that you can have more than one money personality. So, like, for me with my personal life, my money personality is a saver. So that's why I was like, I can't afford to buy that. I can't, because I always wanted to plan for my future. But in my business mindset, I'm a risk taker. I'm like, oh, I want to do that because I'm like this personal growth junkie, and I want to like build and grow and learn more. And so I'm like, I'm going to get into this program, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do this and do that. And I'm like investing money in myself constantly. So I'm like a completely different person when it comes to my business than I am in my personal life.
And the separate account, the Me Money account, it's also not saying you have to spend this money. So for the saver that's like, well, no, this is way out of my comfort zone to have to spend money. It's not saying you have to spend it. You can still then take that money and still save it, but it's giving you that flexibility. It's giving you the permission to spend if you need to, without the guilt, without feeling bad, without second guessing yourself. But then if you don't spend it, go put it in a savings account and do what you're most comfortable with. But at least it's giving, like I said, the permission, but then you're still appeasing every personality or every feeling we have about money. So
Yeah.
we've alluded to it a couple times now, but why don't we go through the money personalities so the audience can, identify where they are, and also maybe what combination of personalities they are? Because I agree, you're not just one. There's a little bit of an element of all of them you have inside of you, but there's one that's more dominant and one that more drives your financial decisions or how you feel about money.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of different versions out there about money personalities and what the names are, but they're really the same thing. And I didn't create these, so I'm not saying that these are something I created, but the ones that I've identified that I talk about in my practice are the saver, the spender, the avoider, the security seeker, and the risk taker. So the saver is somebody who's practical, frugal, and like has a sense of pride in stretching the dollar, like, I love a good deal. Like, you'll you'll reuse things, you'll thrift shop maybe. So like me, I was always like the coupon person. Like I'm not going to buy something if I don't have a coupon or it's not on sale. Like I'm never paying full price. I'll wait. So that's me, the saver. And like we talked about, me money gives me permission to enjoy the money that I worked so hard to protect and that I'm putting in my thing. It gives me permission to do that. The spender. Now, the spender can spend money on themselves or they can be generous. They can be spending money on other people, like treating people to dinner or buying gifts for their kids or grandkids or whatever it is. It could be on themselves or other people, but they like to use their money to create memories, express love. Like none of these are bad things. Um, so like I said, it brings mindfulness to their habits. So it shouldn't be restrictive. It should feel like I'm choosing on what I spend now instead of just spending willy-nilly. So am I choosing to spend my money on this or not? And then an avoider is somebody who doesn't like to think about money. Like it's just too complicated or it's boring or stressful. And they're just more like easygoing, like the money's in the bank, I'm going to spend it. And maybe they are saving a little bit. Doesn't mean they're not saving. It just means that they aren't really using money to define their choices. So with them, by ignoring money, it might be costing them peace, because they don't have clarity or reassurance. So it helps them reconnect and be intentional without shame or stress, which is probably the reason why they're avoiding it, shame or stress, right? Security seekers are the ones, like I said, that love to know what to expect. They try to put everything in a plan and rarely make those impulsive decisions. So, like we said, you can still put the money into your account and save it. You can still be saving. Um, but it's going to allow you that flexibility to know that you can spend that without losing your footing from your overall plan because it already is a part of your overall plan. And even the savers and the security seekers, eventually, even if they're just moving the money into that account and saving it and not actually spending it, at some point there's going to be something that they want that they're gonna be like, "Oh, I would never spend that on myself. I would never," and then they'd be like, "You know what? I can because I have the money already. It's already there. It's already says this is for you." So at some point, there's gonna be something that they're gonna want that they're gonna not have to answer to themselves on. They're gonna just be like, "I'm just gonna do it." And then the risk taker is the bold ideas and, you'd rather just go big and do it rather than never try, right? So this is people that spontaneity might run their strategy and the me money is going to bring clarity, but it's not going to kill the thrill because you're going to still have that like if I want to do this I can do this. But again, if I do this and I say yes now, I might be saying no to something else later. So do I really value this thing that I want to say yes to? Or might I decide that I'd rather do something later? Is this really worthy of my me money? So that's kind of how the money personalities work and how they tie into the me money concept.
And what's important to note is that none of these personalities are bad, right? None are bad, none are good. They just are. And so it's important to understand where you fall, but then also when we take though these personalities to an extreme, that's where the issue with money arises. So the spender, it may not they may not just be spending on themselves, they may be spending on others, which is great. Then if it goes to an extreme where it's like you're out buying dinner, you're covering dinner when we all go out to eat, but you're in credit card debt as a result of it, or that's where it gets to the extreme, or the saver of I just want to save, save, save. When it goes to the extreme, I call it money hoarding. You can never have enough. You feel guilty about every dollar you spend. So when it's taken to the extreme, that's where the issues arise, or we have that negative feeling with money or that negative experience with money. And correct me if I'm wrong, or if you've thought about this, if if you don't speak to other people about money, or you don't have money conversations, especially with someone who maybe thinks differently about money than you, I feel like your personality only gets more enhanced because you're just living in your money vacuum. The saver, for example, they just keep saving, 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 and they just keep all this internalized. Well, I feel guilty for spending money. I can never, I can never have enough. I want to keep on, the goalpost keeps moving as far as how much money that needs to be in the bank account. If you don't have someone to kind of check you for a second and go, whoa, like you achieved that savings goal, or you can afford, let's go through the math, you can afford to go on that trip. If you don't have someone to provide that checks and balances, I think that's where our personalities only become more enhanced. Or the spender, like if someone doesn't go, like you had your conversation with your husband, like, hey, let's there might be another way to do this. You need someone to check you every once in a while. And I think that's why we need to have these money conversations, because someone's going to bring a different perspective in.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things, Sherry, is that what we're talking about is the emotional side of money. So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the emotions that are tied to it. The emotions that we have that go into what built our money personality, like it's all intertwined. And then the emotions that we have when we spend money, when we buy things for other people, when we buy things for ourselves, it's all emotional. It's not just numbers. So I think that understanding where you are, and this is why I say you can't build a life you love on a budget you hate, because you have to know who you are and what your money personality is or what your emotions are around money, because otherwise you're just trying to put yourself into someone else's spreadsheet. And if it doesn't align with who you are, then it's never going to work for you, because you need to bring you into it. You need to bring your feelings about money, your emotions, and your wants, desires, your guilt, your shame, whatever it is. You need to bring it to the surface and ask yourself, why isn't this working for me? Why am I not able to stick to this budget? It's because there's something there that's not aligning with the way you feel about money or your money personality.
That's great. To extend on that, if you find you are the giver and you like to give and buy for others or treat others or whatever it is, and that's taking up a substantial part of the money leaving your household, asking yourself, well, why do I want it? Why do I do that? It may obviously be a bigger issue, but is there a way that you can still give without it costing money? So then volunteering your time or whatever it is to fill that gap that you feel inside of you, but doing it in a way that works for your pocketbook as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you could take the me money concept if that's your main thing is giving to other people. You could take that concept, and if you know that that's a big part of your personality, you can take that me money concept and make a gift money bucket, right? And open a separate account for that and say this is what I've decided that I'm going to be able to use to give. However you give, whether it's charities, nonprofits, whether it's family members, whatever it is. And then that way you have that line, like, this is what I can do. And then you're choosing, what am I valuing? What can I spend? Can I take the whole family out on to dinner? Can I take the whole family on vacation? Whatever it is. Can I donate that extra $100 to the animal shelter? If is the idea is to take what your money personality is, or what your emotional parts of your money are, and put it into a space where you can be mindful, a container that says this is for that, and you're allowed to do that. But you also have to have, some uh place to put it so that you're aware, right? It's just making you aware of how much you're spending on that.
Is step one looking at where their money is going? Is it determining their money personality? Can you oftentimes determine their personality based on looking at their banking transactions? Where's the starting point in all of this?
This all came from me being a financial advisor in the past and starting with cash flow. And every time we start with cash flow, it's like budgeting, and people are like, oh, I got to figure out my budget. But there was never a place for them. So that's also kind of where it started. Where I start with in the Me Money course, I start first with identifying your money personality so that you can understand. But if I have a conversation with someone, I can usually tell in like the first 15 minutes when I start talking about money what their money personality is. Um, so we start with in the Me Money course, we start with the money personality so they can understand who they are. And then I say, let's just work on picking a me money number. And I say, just think about the things that you spend only on yourself, the things that benefit you only. So that aren't responsibilities. So that could be like that morning latte. That could be, shoes that you buy. It could be, golfing. It could, whatever your thing is, whatever you spend on yourself, just track it for like 2 weeks, but then also think about like all the other things that you do that are maybe once a year and then come up with a number. So I don't deep dive into the budget first because that's where people are just like, oh, it's too much work. So I say start there. Start with that number and just work with that. Um, and then I go into like a money confidence quiz. It's a little quiz that I have, a money confidence quiz. And I talk about like how confident are you with money? And then we go into building an actual budget and figuring out what you're spending on everything. Um, and then we compare what Me Money number we come with up with through that with the Me Money number that they came up with. Sorry. And the thing is that, and you probably know this, but when you go through cash flow with clients as a financial planner, you go through and you come up with their expenses and you come up with their income, and this is what's coming in and this is what's going out. And then there's like this gray area. It's like, where is this money? And so I say that's either part of your Me Money, or that's where you need to take that number and put that into savings and be intentional about saving that, because that's the part where you have no idea where your money is going. But a lot of times that's the Me Money. That's the number that is being spent on themselves because that's the part that's missing from the budget, you know? And so sometimes when people look at that number, they're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. Like I'm spending that much money on myself. And there are times when it can be negative where it's like, okay, well, this is why you're having problems because you're not living within your means. And then you need to have like, a deep conversation with yourself about how can I better live within my means, right? Um, but I mean, I don't want it to be overwhelming to people to come in because budgeting is overwhelming and it's restrictive and it's a pain. But when you when you come into it with the attention that this is not to be restrictive, this is to give you freedom, it's just changing the script behind it that makes people want to do it and understand it. Like, this is gonna give me freedom.
So, what are some examples of me money categories, like or expenses that go into me money, like hair care for women? Obviously, is very important, very expensive. I classify that as a need. Like that is a need for me. Um, is me money needs and wants? It's anything that is outside of the regular household expenses? So anything extra, essentially?
So that is a very good question, and it is a question that every person needs to ask themselves because the answer isn't the same for me as it is for you, and it's gonna be completely different for someone else, right? So for me, um, I no longer dye my hair, so my hair is not as expensive. So I just get haircuts, and my husband gets haircuts, and he actually gets his haircut more than me because his hair is short and mine's long. So we decided that haircuts were not a part of Me Money. Now, my nails, on the other hand, I pay for with my Me Money because that to me is not a necessity. It's not something I have to do. It's not something that serves anyone but me. So that's part of my Me Money. But to someone else, they might say, you know what, my nails are like really important to me. Maybe they have a job where they use their hands and their hands are like, and they're like, no, I have to have that. Like that's a necessity. And so that could be their choice to have their nails be a necessity and not part of their Me Money. So what I say is the general rule is if it's something that serves you only, that should be in your Me Money. If it's something that's serving you as a partner with someone else, then probably isn't from your Me Money, right? that's probably coming from a joint account or something else. But it's going to be unique to every relationship, to every person. And by the way, this does work if you're single too, because it gives you that framework to spend money on yourself. Because when you're single, you don't have to answer to anybody but yourself. Um, and that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so this works for single people too. Um, so I think that your me money is going to be so unique to you. The number is going to be unique. The reasons are going to be unique and what you decide to put in there. Now, I want to give you another example. So there's another like famous financial person out there who has uh, a show where people call in and they say, can I afford this? And so there's an episode where a person calls in and says, I want to buy this pair of designer shoes. And my husband says, I can't buy the shoes. And she's like, I have this event coming up and I want to buy the shoes for this event. But my husband says no. And so this person, the advisor person or coach, whatever you want to call her, says, um, well, what do you have? How much, what are you making? What do you have in savings? And so this person says, I have this, I have this, I have this. And the money coach person says, no, you can't buy those shoes. You can't afford those shoes. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm watching this and I'm like, no, you can buy those shoes. I can tell you exactly how you can buy those shoes. You have your number and you are putting it into an account and you can choose to buy, you know, like I said, $10 pairs of shoes, or you can save up that money and buy that $100 pair of shoes. Now, the shoes she was talking about were way more than that, but making it a simple math. But the idea is that you don't have to say no. And when you have your me money, if your husband says no, you say you don't, this isn't, it's already decided. I already have the money. I don't have to ask you. I can just buy these shoes if that's what you really want. Now, this person might go, okay, I'm going to save up this money for these shoes. But as time goes on, they might be like, you know what? Do I really need those shoes? Like, do I really want to say no to all these things now to say yes to that later? And then it's going to be their decision. And they might say, yeah, heck yes, I do. Or they might say, you know what? I don't really need those shoes. I'd rather have all these other things. So it, it just puts it in that place.
I think me money, going back to a previous comment that you said, I think me money is amazing for single women because like you said, when you're single, you have no one to answer to, but you also may not have anyone to talk to about it. So there's no checks and balances and everything falls on you. So you could feel guilty for every dollar you spend that's outside of a necessity because you're like, well, if I lose my job or if I have to make an improvement to my home, whatever it is, it all falls on me. So maybe the stress around spending money could be so great. Or conversely, there is no checks and balances. So it's like, I have no one to answer to, swipe that card, So I think the me money for single people is amazing. I think that makes so much sense because it gives the guardrails if guardrails are needed or the permission if permission is needed. Um, but and I was having this conversation the other day. We're taught how to save. Like if you Google, how do I save, emergency fund, all of that stuff. We're taught how to save. But then we're not taught how to spend or use our savings. We're kind of just taught, well, you save money, you put it away, you save it for a rainy day, quote unquote. I hate that saying, but save it for a rainy day, or this is your emergency fund, or this is your slush fund, whatever it is. We're taught all of those things, but then we're never taught when can we use what we've saved? So if you have the shoe conversation and to your point of the story of when we're calling in, and I think everyone may know what show you're referring to, when you call in and say, can I afford this? I have this much in savings. You're saving that for a reason. We may not know what that reason is when you're saving, but then a reason appears in our lap and it may be our 6-month payment of our car insurance, or it may be summer camp or a new fridge, whatever it is. Those reasons appear. And then that's why we are saving. So we can pay for those things without freaking out about it and
Yeah.
without feeling bad about it.
And your emergency fund is a separate thing, but it is kind of the same thing because you might have like that saving part of your me money might be your emergency me money fund, right? Like if you're the one who's not spending it every month and you're setting part of it aside, you could be like all of a sudden there's something that you really want to do and you wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. But now that you've saved that money, like this opportunity arises, whatever it is. Maybe it's a concert that you want to go to. Maybe a friend calls you and says, "Hey, I've got front row tickets to your favorite band and I was going with someone else and they're not going now. Do you want to buy their ticket?" And you're like, normally you might be like, "Oh my God, I can't afford that." But if you already have it, you're like, "This is a once in a lifetime opportunity and I've already set this money aside for myself. I'm going to do it." Whatever your thing is.
As we wrap up, for someone who's listening, who's crushing it career wise, they're doing the quote unquote right things with their money, they're making good income, they're saving, but they're still not prioritizing themselves financially. What's the very first step they should take today?
They should analyze what they're spending on themselves, over a couple of weeks' time. The longer the better, but you don't want to wait too long. You just want to get started because if you wait too long, you'll never start. Or just pick a number and start putting that money into the Me Money account. Open that bank account, start moving it in, just to start getting some structure around it, and then use that money anytime you're spending money on yourself. And if you're not spending on money on yourself, this is giving you permission to spend money on yourself. Right? So if you're that saver or that security seeker and you're just putting everything away. Now, you could also be the other way because some people make multiple six figures and they still feel like they're in that scarcity mode. They're like, I got to save all of this for retirement, or I got to save for this, or maybe my household expenses are so much, that I feel like I'm overextended in all the other things that I'm doing, so I'm not going to spend on me. But just get started. Just start it because the best time to take action is when you're thinking about it right now. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you are like, I want to do this, start now. Go open that bank account, just grab a number and start going with it. And then you're going to need to adjust it as time goes on. And, you're always going to be looking at that number and saying like, is this the right number? Should it be more? Should it be less? You should be reevaluating it at least annually, just like your financial plan. But just start there. And this is a great way to get started on just being more intentional in planning altogether. So if you're someone who's been like, gosh, I really need to do more with money, I need to understand money more. I've always felt like I should talk to someone, but I never knew really where to start. This is where you start right here.